Hello everyone and welcome to our first ever Webtalk series here at Elemendar. I'm your host Renee, and today we're joined with none other than Giorgos, the CEO and co-founder of Elemendar itself. So, Giorgos, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, thank you.
Good to hear. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I do believe that the conversation that we're going to have is definitely going to be insightful for those watching or listening in to what we have coming. So I thought the first question, which would probably be the best question to ask for those who may not know much about Elemendar, is how did the name come about for those who may have heard of us but may not know where the name came from?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a pun to begin with. So you've got to go back 4 years ago when Sarah and I were at the first GCHQ National Cybersecurity Accelerator. That was in early 2017. And at the time, for those of you familiar with the security industry, the RSA conference obviously goes on in February, and that's in RSA 2017. It's when IBM launched Watson for cybersecurity. Now, that was the very first time that somebody as big and prominent as the Big Blue came out and said, this is an important use case for AI and cybersecurity, the ability to translate unstructured information into structured. So we looked at that and we thought, fantastic, here's excellent market validation for what we're trying to do. We're going to let IBM spend $300 million worth of marketing on it because we don't have that. And at the Accelerator, we had a lot of Sherlock fans at the time following the TV show. And of course, we know that Watson is the founder of IBM in that particular case rather than Sherlock's sidekick, but the pun was just too good to pass. So, of course, it was elementary, my dear Watson, and then being in this signals intelligence-led environment, obviously we had people going, it's just like radar. Hence the portmanteau, elementary, radar, that's how we got Elemendar.
Okay, I can see how that links perfectly. And to be honest, it is a very unique name as well. But now that you've given the background, it definitely comes together and makes sense. As we all know, there's been a new launch within Reed, somewhat as a new added depth to the cyber analysts to be integrated alongside, should I say, the AI already used. How would you say this has changed the game from what Reed was before to what it's now capable of doing for a company or an organization?
It's a really exciting development. And it all starts with feedback that we had from our users and everybody that we've been showing this capability to over the last 4 years. And it comes from two sides, really. One is that us humans don't always like to trust robots completely. And so having a black box tell you that, yeah, this is what you should do with your threat intel, well, it can be useful, it can save you time, but sometimes you just want to be able to check up on it and understand why it's giving you the information that it's giving you. And the second one is a question of efficiency. So we've had a number of our users use the tool and then say, okay, well, it's great that I get all this time saving. At that point, I also want to be editing what I get from the tool before I then put it into, let's say, my threat intel platform or a source system that I'm using downstream of Elemendar. And that editing function was something that would take them an extra step that would need to involve potentially another system. And it was just a bit more faff and more friction. So we took that feedback on board and we realized that if we had a user interface where our users could see explanations of exactly what it was that the AI was finding and where it was finding that in the threat intel report, it would take care of a lot of the trust questions because they could check on those outputs. And then secondly, giving them the ability to edit those outputs before they leave the Elemendar platform takes care of that added step, or removes rather that added step of having to edit them in our system. And so by having this user interface, it means that an analyst can now see exactly where the recommendations of the AI are coming from when processing a particular threat report, and in the same interface, edit them so that they reflect exactly what that analyst wants to give to the downstream system or the downstream team. So in one go, better trust between the human and the machine, and more efficiency for those analysts.
And you can definitely see that, I guess, sometimes when it comes to the idea of trust. Often when you see bots come up, you're like, do they know how they can help me? Or are they really going to be able to understand my question? So I think the element that has been added is going to be a complete game changer to the way that analysts can get their information read and, like you said, efficiently. Another question for you. What would you say are the industries or organizations that would benefit from Reed's now new capabilities in their potential systems that they already have?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because in the first place, you need, obviously, as an organization, to have a threat analyst or threat intelligence analyst on staff to be able to use the product.
Yeah.
And the biggest difference with having that extra user interface is that it makes the collaboration between the threat intelligence analysts and their security operations colleagues a little bit easier and smoother. So I'd be really interested to hear from those colleagues in the security operations side, how they're able to have more trust in what comes to them from the intelligence upstream, and how the workflow is more efficient by having those outputs going directly into their systems. So yeah, to sum up, it would be those organizations that have that interface relatively well defined between threat intelligence and security operations. That would be really exciting to. We have way more coming on that front into next year. Explainable AI is a big deal, and it's something that's not been applied very consistently in all solutions, but we see it as a very big enabler to getting more adoption of those tools in the places where it's going to matter the most.
Definitely would agree with you on that one. Yes, lastly, the main question I would have to ask you is, if there are companies now watching or listening to this, how can they get in touch with Elemendar to, whether it's demo the Reed product, or to just see what there is for them that could work for their analysts?
The best thing to do is to get in touch with us directly and get a demo. My colleague Tristan is always happy to talk to any companies that are interested in trying out our tools. Go on our website, fill in the inquiry form, or just hit me up on LinkedIn. We're happy either way.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Giorgos, for joining us today. And like I said, for those of you who are watching, this is the first of many Webtalk series from Elemendar. I've been your host, Renee, and today we're joined with the CEO and co-founder of Elemendar.